And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hands on Triple B and Joey and the Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joey, rock, cock, and show morality. Triple B and Joey and Triple B, baby. Triple B and Joey, rock, cock, and show morality. We're coming in. Oh, it's seeking the truth. About JFK. Here's the long-going podcast crew. And here we go.
And here we go.
What's up? Joe was almost no-show Joe tonight. He barely made it.
I made it by a minute.
No, he was under a minute, brother.
Well, the important thing is
the intro was already playing.
I had to reset the router to make sure our viewers have the best quality. So I did it in time. And here we go. How are you today, sir? How was your week?
I'm fantastic. The week sucked, but it's Friday night and it's time to party. It's time to do a show. It's time to hang out with our peeps. What's up, everybody, in the comments section? I see we've got some thanking to do already to Jack and John. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for the super chats.
Thank you.
Yes, you guys rock. You guys rock. And I see some people speculating about what we're going to be talking about tonight. Let's see. Ashley's tore up already down there in Australia. That's all right. You go to bed and catch us tomorrow, my friend.
Yes. Replay crew is okay.
And Scott's getting ready to tie one on. Claude's here. James is in the house.
Mr. Bungold, Alpha 66,
Bruce, Tim,
Mrs. Tiny Dancer, Ashley,
yes. Man,
Scott.
Right. I'm excited about this one, Joe. I think last week it was kind of a dud for us, but we're going to redeem ourselves this week. I promise you. We've got a very interesting show, and it comes on the heels of something that our guest that we had on the show 2 shows ago, John Limback, something that we touched on in the show. We talked about Lauren Hall and a certain Carcano that he ended up giving to his son. And then I came across something else, an article from 1984, and it's called "The Guns That Killed Kennedy" by J. David Truby. And it's in a very obscure piece, but in the article, it mentions something that I had totally forgotten about. And it's been a very long time since I read this book. I got a first edition, 76. It has a sweet picture of Robert Morrow on the back with a Carcano.
That was awesome.
I remembered something about, and who was it? I think it was Garden and Guns pointed out that something looks sus with the rifle in the picture for the show. And yeah, it's a 7.35 millimeter Carcano. Okay. And the reason that's significant is that is the exact same rifle that Lauren Hall gave to his stepson. And we'll get into that a little bit for those that missed the show. And I really want to read you part of that article so you can actually know the relevance of what his stepson has to say. But before we get into all that, so a lot of this stems, we're going to get into Robert Morrow, we're going to get into the Carcano, but part of Robert Morrow's story, okay, is that he was a CIA contract agent from 1961 to 64. So he claims, of course, official documentation is sketchy at best for his actions because, of course, being a contract agent, there's very likely not going to be a paper trail. But this book that he wrote, he got away with being able to publish his book in 1976 as quote unquote historical fiction.
Yes.
Okay.
Same
But
as the Night Watch, right?
Yeah. The byline of the book is a reconstruction of certain clandestine events from the Bay of Pigs to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. So some of the stuff in this book might be a little glamorized or spiced up a little bit. Some of it could be made up from whole cloth. Some of it could be true. And it's up to us to try to figure out what is what. But when you start finding things from multiple sources that kind of make sense, it's very hard to ignore. And one of them things we're going to be talking about today is that 7.35 millimeter Mannlicher Carcano rifle. But we'll get into that, I promise. But I want Joe to set the table first with his alleged handler, a fellow by the name of Tracey Barnes, who worked for the CIA. He was the director of domestic operations, I believe, during the time of the Kennedy assassination. And I don't really know too much about him. And luckily, Joe has done a little digging. So I'm going to turn it over to, I'm not going to call you the sexy beast from the Northeast today.
Oh, come on. I was fishing for it. I was going to put my name as.
No, not going to do that. You're sleepy,
just
creepy Joe Borelli. Today.
What am I? Yeah. Ugh. I was going to put my name.
I can't compliment you very often. You know.
I know.
And for those of you watching, and real quick, Joe, before you start, let me throw this up on the screen and remind everybody to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and make sure you hit that little bell to get notified when new episodes drop.
It helps a lot with, our
algorithms.
Yes, everyone says that, but it is true. And I believe we are up 30-40% in subscribers since Lancer. So we have a lot of new subscribers, and we want to thank those who have. And thank you, Colonel Reb, for your $10 super chat.
A lot of people who watch the show are not subscribed. So if you're digging what you're hearing and you like the show, just hit the subscribe button. It doesn't cost anything.
Yes. And so I admittedly did not know like a ton about Mr. Tracy Barnes. So I was wondering, who was this guy?
He's DB Cooper.
He could be.
Sorry.
Well, hey, he was a paratrooper, as I will get into. It's possible. Hey, you
look
never
at
know.
him. You could strap $200,000 on his ass, and
look
sure
at
he
that.
can make it to the ground.
That might be like take one of the hijacking, seeing if you could strap that on, because it was very common for the leg straps of the extra weapons of the paratroopers of Normandy, because of the high speeds that they would get ripped off. And apparently DB Cooper figured that out. But back to Tracy Barnes. He was born in 1911 in Long Island, New York, about 45 minutes from me. And he served with the U.S. Army Air Force Intelligence in the OSS in World War II. He joined, and I put that in quotations because that's in 1951. But if you were with the OSS, you were probably with the OSS and then transferred to the CIA. And in 1953, he served as deputy director of the Psychological Strategy Board during the Korean War, and was a principal case officer involved in the Guatemalan coup of 54. So there's a couple interesting things here because the psychological strategy board, that is when all the Korean War veterans started coming back and they were quote unquote brainwashed, right? And that led the paranoid intelligence services to think that other people had figured out mind control, which resulted in, guess what, Rob?
What is that, sir?
MK Ultra eventually.
Yes. Almost said Manchurian candidates. Yep, that's right in line there.
Yeah, but
the MK Ultra program.
Yeah, it started because the veterans from the Korean War came back brainwashed, and they were like, "What have they figured out that we haven't?" So, anyways, 54 to 56, Chief of Station Germany, which is interesting. Was General Walker there in Germany in 54 to 56? I know he left in 61. That would be interesting.
I don't know, but quite possibly.
Yeah, maybe someone in the comments. And 57 to 59, not 79, Chief of Station in London.
Google machine.
In 1960, he was appointed Director of Plans under Richard Bissell Jr. and helped plan the Bay of Pigs operation, which took place in April 61. In 1962, as you mentioned, he was made head of Domestic Operations Division of the CIA, which was obviously the domestic division. But interesting about his experience in the Guatemalan coup, and I'm going to read a little part from Someone Would Have Talked by the great Larry Hancock, is that he would have had the ability to build relationships with a lot of the characters we talk about frequently, right? David Atlee Phillips, E. Howard Hunt, even though we might not think of him as a plotter. David Morales, he was very it seemed to be fast-tracked, and that is what I'm going to read from Someone Would Have Talked.
And real quick, Walker was not in Germany until 59.
Okay. Allegedly. Power. Cool. But so this is what Larry Hancock wrote in Someone Would Have Talked. And of course, it's not working.
Pull it up, Joe.
I'm going to. I'm going to read it because
that's an ironic title, by the way, because this book is full of people that did talk.
Right.
Yes. Kind of like the title of this podcast. It's ironic. Blunt Man Borelli.
No.
There's your new nickname.
No, that's not it.
You're no longer the silk or shit. You're no longer the sexy beast from the Northeast. I almost said Silk City hot sauce. I was looking at Austin's comments.
Well, why don't you plug that while I find this?
Hey, everybody, if you're looking for some damn good hot sauce to put on your delicious food and make it even more delicious, then I would highly recommend you to get into the information section under this very video, and you'll find a link where you can order some hot sauce. Put in the code GUNMAN, that's GUNMAN, for 20% off your entire order. You won't regret it. It is delicious and fantastic and succulent and so delicious.
It is. And I had some this morning, sir, and I have good news. I have found it. So without further ado, and I apologize for the delay. Croissant. With the comments provided by readers of the research manuscript of Someone Would Have Talked, it has become clear that further background information needed to provide on other CIA career officers involved in Cuban affairs. One of the most senior officers was Tracy Barnes. He played a key role in CIA's Cuba project, serving as second to Richard Bissell. Next, he took a follow-up assignment to head the CIA's somewhat mysterious domestic operations division. It was in this latter position that he recruited E. Howard Hunt to serve as his senior covert operations officer. Much of the following information is provided courtesy of the intelligence literature of research of Pat Spear, especially the available public history of the CIA domestic operations, the possible link between the domestic contact service also raises the possibility of another point of contact with Lee Oswald in 1963. During World War II, Tracy Barnes served in the OSS in Europe and gained the confidence of Allen Dulles while working with him on an unsuccessful project to obtain an early German surrender. Barnes became one of the first generation of ex-OSS officers who formed the core and leadership of the CIA when he joined in 1947. I'm sorry. So, does that line up with the 1951 timeline given by the CIA's website? It does not, as the dates usually do not. With the beginning of the Korean conflict, Barnes joined the CIA as chief of political and psychological department staff and devoted much of his energy to CIA operations in that conflict. Years later, David Phillips would write that Barnes's first attempt at a report on the successful PBSuccess operation, I'll get into that, I promise. We'll get there. Project in Guatemala had to be entirely reworked because it had consisted primarily of Barnes's remarks about operations in Korea. So this was what you would call a holy cow of the CIA. Thank you, Trey.
Yes, Trey. You see what he says there? That son of a bitch, Gruber, did Liberty Lobby again.
No, he didn't.
See?
No, he didn't.
Mm-hmm. He's son of a bitch.
I don't know if he is doing it intentionally or if he's doing it to mock you.
Hang on, Joe. I got an incoming message.
Hey there.
Okay.
This is Mark Gruber, along with my girlfriend Derek Cuntley from America's Really Old Stories. You are about to hear the most listened to exclusively JFK assassination podcast, and one of my favorites, the Lone Gunman podcast. Now, here's Rob and Joe.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Thank you.
I don't know. What do people in the hi Colleen? What do people in the chat think? Do they think Robert is doing this intentionally, or do they think that he
Colleen's
really
high on
knows
laughing
about
gas
this?
right now from the dentist. She's sitting on her couch drooling, laughing her ass off at us.
Who,
that's
Colleen?
okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Some nitrous.
Cheeks all swollen,
Hey,
drool flying everywhere.
laughing gas is nitrous. Yeah, it's will definitely make you laugh.
The Liberty Lobby.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. But so I wanted to then talk about some of his
I see Trey said it was unintentional. I don't know, Trey.
I know. I might side with Trey. I don't know. I just don't know if Gruber is like that dialed in to know. Like he's just like in his own world.
that he at least he listens to the show. I don't know about
No, Cuntley
Cuntley.
does. Cuntley does, because that's where he gets a lot of ideas.
He doesn't know anything.
Oh my god, bro. Okay. We're gonna save this for a locals exclusive. But I messaged Rob today about something I heard about a guest who we were just talking about. And let me just say that disaster is an understatement as to his thoughts on the questions this particular person asked him. I was shocked. It was unbelievable. So we'll save that. But anyways, so Operation PBSuccess was the Guatemala coup in 1954. Eisenhower authorized it as a covert action to remove the leader, replace Arbenz with a more moderate leader. CIA trained operatives including Tracy Barnes, David Morales, E. Howard Hunt, David Atlee Phillips, and William Rip Robertson were involved.
All operators, boy.
Yes, sir. They were serious people, and they were involved they dropped 100,000 pamphlets over Guatemala, detailing the communist
Is there even 100,000
chronology.
people in Guatemala?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm sure
They can
there's
read a pamphlet.
I don't know that. Oh, that's a different question.
Hey, look, it's bread falling from the sky.
So this PBSuccess, ironically, was a huge success, as in within a week they had removed Jacobo Arbenz and replaced him with I don't know, Castillo, something like that. But the people involved in that were rewarded greatly, including Barnes and a lot of the names I just mentioned. Later, Barnes and Bissell regretted the outcome of the Guatemala coup. Okay. In November 1954, Barnes replaced General Lucien Truscott as head of CAA in Frankfurt. I think we already went over that. And at this time, William Harvey, Shackley, and Morales were also in Germany, allegedly, which is very interesting because you have to think the operation as planned would be between people that you could trust. This is an interesting document I found, and Tracy Barnes was involved in deciding the Cuban Revolutionary Council's budget in 1961 in July, and their current budget at a level of $100,000 a month. That is more than $1 million in today.
Oh my gosh, $1 million
a month. Times it by that. I mean, it's nothing.
Unbelievable.
Nothing to what we're giving these days, but either way.
Sorry, that was my Fetzer impression. Claude wanted me to do that real quick.
Oh, I missed that. I'm sorry. Bro, Fetzer is before my time. I just.
What are you trying to
I
say?
don't
I'm
know.
old?
No, I'm just saying, like, I just never paid attention to him.
No, you just didn't pay. You just weren't interested in the case early enough to pay attention to him. He's been irrelevant for 20 years.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that's fair.
And a cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for.
So he's. So he's essentially trying to reduce the budget, but still give them over $510,000 a month. But the next one is from a week or two later. And he is talking about plausible deniability. And he goes, everyone else, like Miami, like I think he's talking about JM Wave, will either indicate no knowledge or no comment with respect to CIA repayments. It is not felt that this will prevent the story coming out, but is believed that the story will be relatively short-lived, and that the no comment phrase gives it little food on which to feed. So this guy was on like the David Atlee Phillips propaganda level. Do you agree, Rob?
Yes.
Which was very interesting.
I mean, he's up there with guys like Morales and Hunt and Harvey and,
Right.
you know, Robertson and, dude, these are all legit field ops. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
these are legit badasses of the CIA. That's why we know who they were. That's why we know their names. You know,
They overthrew governments. They were successful at it. And
they were dirty players. They knew how to play the games and benefit themselves.
and they ran assassination programs or trained for them. So that puts them automatically as suspects. But was Tracy Barnes someone who had pre-knowledge, was a plotter? That's a huge question that I'm not prepared to answer yet, personally.
Well, I have an answer. I don't know if it's legit or not, but
Okay, let's hear it.
According to Robert Morrow, the answer to your question, Joe, is a big hell yes. So let me see something here real quick. All right. So Robert Morrow allegedly worked with the CIA from 61 to 64. He says he was ordered to buy 4 Italian Mannlicher Carcano rifles by his CIA case officer, Tracy Barnes, in 1963. Following his testimony before the House Select Committee on Assassinations. Now, I didn't know that Robert Morrow testified before the HSCA. I've never seen his testimony ever or a reference to it ever. So that must be something deep in the belly of the National Archives that nobody's seen.
That would be an interesting FOIA request.
Yeah. It says today, in 1984, when this article was written, not even his closest friends are sure where he is or even if he is. After hearing his story, it's not difficult to see why this man has been very high up on some very premium hit lists. According to Morrow, the Kennedy assassination was a conspiracy involving a cabal of Cuban exiles, ex-CIA gunmen, renegade CIA people who were still active with the company. And he says, I want to stress, though, that JFK's murder was not an official or even unofficial CIA operation. Even though there were CIA people involved, it was a freelance effort. Lee Harvey Oswald was a patsy who was framed for the crime. Oswald never shot anyone, nor was the so-called Oswald rifle used to shoot anyone. On the contrary, the 4 rifles I was ordered to buy were intended for that assassination in Dallas. Oswald's rifle was a 6.5 millimeter Carcano rifle. The ones I bought were 7.35 millimeter models. The ones I bought were selected specifically as sniper rifles and were quite excellent weapons with excellent telescopic sights mounted onto them. The Oswald rifle was, by comparison, a piece of inaccurate junk with a malfunctioning sight. He says, he bought these on CIA orders, and the weapon which appears to have been employed in this criminal act to boost, what he's saying here. So a declassified CIA memo written 6 days after the Kennedy murder adds strong evidence supporting Moore's contention. The weapon which appears to have been employed in this criminal act is a Model 91 7.35 millimeter 1938 modification, the CIA report noted. That is exactly the same type of weapon purchased by Morrow. And then there was supposedly a 30-point weapon analysis, which was transmitted from Italy to CIA headquarters. The agency's experts strongly questioned an assassin using the 6.5 millimeter weapon attributed to Oswald. The report noted that the first lot of 7,000 Model 91s, the 6.5 millimeter rifle, had disastrous results. Many of them burst with frequent fatal consequences to the shooter, and many didn't fire at all. The 6.5 millimeter rifles of the type owned by Lee Oswald were sold to U.S. arms dealers for as little as $1.10 each. The CIA report noted these weapons were imported into the U.S. classed as, quote, scrap iron. On the other hand, as Morrow pointed out, the 7.35 sniper rifles were accurate and reliable weapons with a much longer barrel than the Oswald model, the 6.5 millimeter. Of the type a professional assassin would or could use in a hit like the Kennedy murder. A switch could easily be made after the shooting to the smaller junky weapon that could be used to tie Oswald to Patsy as evidence of his work as the lone assassin. Morrow goes on to say, at the time I purchased the 7.35 millimeter rifles, I had no idea what they were to be used for. I was ordered only to buy them and deliver them to another CIA man. Later, from a variety of sources, Morrow was able to learn the chilling story behind his purchase of the surplus military rifles. So, he was actually ordered to buy these rifles in Baltimore. And I don't know if anybody watched The Irishman. Joe, did you watch The Irishman?
Yeah, I love it.
All right. Well, there's a scene in there where David Ferry actually comes to Baltimore to get 4 Carcano rifles and radio equipment to take back to New Orleans. Okay? And this is coming from a totally separate source. Totally separate. So the story is out there. So who is this Robert Morrow guy? So let's figure this out. So he was born in 1930. He went to Pennsylvania Military College, became an engineer in Pittsburgh. And in 1956, he joined the Martin Company. Joe.
You can't make it. You can't make it up. You can't make it up.
As a senior engineer in Baltimore, Maryland. In 1958, Morrow moved to Washington, where he set up an independent lab at his home on Hazelwood Avenue. And for the next 6 months, he works with Stan Clark on the Doomsday Project.
Okay. Can I stop you there?
Yes.
Did a ship containing, I know our common friend Doug talks about it, the Black Nine, depart from Baltimore?
It surely did, sir.
Just put that thought about that randomly.
Yep.
Pray continue, sir.
Yeah. In July, he joined the Neurology Project with Dr. John Seipel of Georgetown University. Now, these are classified CIA projects of which I could find not very much. But, they're along the lines of, early MK Ultra type stuff. Mario Coley. Okay. Now, this guy arrived in the U.S. in February of 1959 and began organizing exile groups against Castro. This guy is responsible for organizing the CRC, which you may have heard of. That was an organization in the Balter building, upstairs from Guy Bannister, run by Sergio Arcacha Smith. Okay.
That we just detailed was getting $1 million a month in 19.
The CIA was funding groups like this. Let's see, Diggs. Soon afterwards, Coley met Marshall Diggs, and in March of 1960, Diggs recruited Morrow to work for this guy, Coley. 3 months later, Morrow met Tracy Barnes and agreed to be Coley's CIA contact. Coley agreed to accept help from the CIA in overthrowing Castro. and in July of 60 established the Cuban Revolutionary Council, or the CRC. And according to Morrow, the CRC informed John F. Kennedy of CIA plans to invade Cuba during the 1960 Democratic National Convention. Morrow also claimed that Coley met Richard Nixon and the CIA in October of 1960, and this resulted in the formation of Operation 40, which you might have heard of.
I have.
In March 61, Coley's 300-man guerrilla army in the Escambray Mountains was decimated by Castro's forces, and this damaged the potential success of the Bay of Pigs operation. Coley now changed his strategy, and with the help of Morrow, he started a counterfeiting operation to undermine the Cuban economy. Now, eventually later, Coley would get busted by the FBI for this counterfeit scheme, and despite pleas that he was doing on behalf of our own government, they still put him in jail. So Morrow continued to work for the CIA, and he traveled to France to pick up a package for Tracy Barnes, and while in Europe, he bought arms for Coley's new army. And in July of 1963, Morrow claims that Tracy Barnes requested that I purchase 4 Mannlicher 7.35 millimeter surplus rifles. According to Barnes, the rifles were available in the Baltimore area from Sonny's Supply Store. Upon my agreement to make the purchase, Barnes requested that I alter the 4-piece of each rifle so the rifles could be dismantled, hidden, and reassembled quickly. I thought this last request odd until I was informed that the rifles were to be used for a clandestine operation. The following day, Morrow claimed that Eladio de Valle, asked him to purchase 4 transceivers. And in August of 63, David Ferry picked up the rifles and transceivers from Robert Morrow in Baltimore. Morrow believed that the idea was to blame Fidel Castro for the assassination of John F. Kennedy in order to trigger an invasion of Cuba. In October of 63, as I said earlier, Coley was arrested by the FBI and sentenced to 2 years in prison, convicted in April of 64. So he was out during the assassination. But in 1976, Morrow published his book, Betrayal, a reconstruction of certain clandestine events from the Bay of Pigs to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Again, very cool book. It's a quick, easy read, and I recommend it. I mean, I think it's a good read, even if it is mostly fiction. It's probably based a lot on fact. It might be embellished a little. I mean, you can see. I think the first chapter jumps into him and David Ferry landing in the dead of night somewhere in Cuba clandestinely and rescuing some prisoners and getting shot at and all this jazz, and they barely make it out alive. So it's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
So this is how it triggered me, this thing, Joe, with the 7.35 millimeter rifles that our guest brought up the other day, or like a couple weeks ago, actually.
That John Papis currently has. Yes.
Now, when this first broke a couple years ago, I believe Doug and I did do something on it.
You did?
Oh, hey, look, Philippe Hemming's in the house. Jerry Hemming's son. Hello, sir.
Oh, Mr.
Long time no speaky. So I think Philippe thinks that all this Robert Morris stuff is horse shit, probably. But let's talk a little bit about this story. And so this thing came out in a Florida newspaper called the Tampa Bay Times in October 2021. And it says, like almost everyone of a certain age, Jim Papis remembers clearly how when he learned that President John F. Kennedy had been murdered in Dallas, Papis would go on to become a dean of USF's business school, and he is retired in Tampa now. I guess that's the University of Southern Florida.
Yeah.
But on that day, Papis was a sophomore at UCLA attending a lecture in anthropology, and someone walked in with a note for the professor, who announced the news. Pappis's reaction was not grief or fear or disbelief, but instead instead of learning upon the president's death, was, "Oh hell, where's Skip?"
Sorry.
So Skip was a nickname for Lauren E. Hall Sr., who was married to Pappis's mother, a soldier of fortune. Hall was prominent in the Free Cuba paramilitary forces trying to overthrow the government of Fidel Castro. Hall had been circulating in Dallas trying to raise money for the cause. Some supporters harbored a bitter hatred of President Kennedy, blaming him for the failed invasion of the Bay of Pigs and angry that Kennedy had abandoned the island to communist rule. So for 57 years, okay, John Papis kept a secret. This past spring, however, he started talking with his brother about the rifle, and together they approached me with their suspicions that their mother's husband was part of a plot to murder the president. Over 6 months, I interviewed the Papis brothers several times. We consulted firearms experts, family records, and old court files. I also reached one of Skip Hall's sons from her previous marriage. As I edged toward the central question, Larry Hall cut me off. "Where are we going with this?" he demanded. "Well," I responded, "2 sons of the woman your father married believe he was involved in the murder of President Kennedy." He says, "I know all about that," Larry Hall answered, "and I'm not saying anything about it," which sounds just like his father. Then he hung up. For the Papis brothers, the last remote chance to settle their family mystery could come down to a decision by Joe Biden later this month about the secret files. So yeah, basically, a couple days after the assassination, Lauren Hall gives a rifle to his stepson. He says, "John, take this rifle." And I believe he was the youngest one. And he had an older brother, Jim. He says, "John, take this rifle." Papis says, Skip told him, "Put it away. Don't touch it. Don't talk about it." When John asked, "What's this all about?" Skip replied, "You'll know." The Carcano was the same make as the rifle Oswald got through the mail from a sporting goods company in Chicago. The one difference is, of course, the one was a 6.5 millimeter Carcano and the other was a 7.35 millimeter Carcano. "Somebody was trying to make a hunting rifle," said Al Lafinga, a retired federal agent and firearms consultant. At the request of the Tampa Bay Times, he studied various photos of the Papis rifle. That would be the only reason for somebody to add a scope unless they were going to shoot the president. Papis sent the rifle for testing and examination to Luke Hogg, a firearms expert in Arizona. Although it came from the same Italian armory as Oswald's, Hogg determined that it was an older version that took slightly larger bullets. Yeah, no doubt. It was a different millimeter. Months after he handed over that rifle to his stepson, Skip told John something else about the assassination. He says there were 2 people on that grassy knoll where witnesses said they saw a shooter, and one was there to kill JFK and the other was there to make sure it happened. And from everybody that listened to the show a couple weeks ago, you know that Lauren Hall's alibi was total dog shit. And he was more than likely in Dallas. So, when you start to put all these things together about a 7.35 millimeter rifle, somebody's bringing these things, on the orders of Tracy Barnes. I mean, he's talking about this in 1976. This is 50 years before we even find out about the Papis rifle. And I actually have some pictures. We were in contact a couple years ago, me and Doug, with this fella, John Papis, and he was nice enough to send us some photos of this Carcano rifle that Skip gave him. So this is basically looking down the barrel. You see the bolt action, right? There's another picture from the top side, bolt. This is a side view. You know, you see that trigger guard, you think automatically Carcano. That's where the magazine goes into the top, comes out at the bottom empty. And here is the butt of the rifle.
Mm-hmm. Not as nice as Marina's, but still.
According to James Herbert Martin, he likes Marina's butt much better. But that is the butt of the rifle, and you know these from the way John Lindback talked, these guys were willing to let people inspect it, hold it, shoot it, whatever they want to do with it. And we were actually almost Doug, I, and Mike from Wall Street Window were going to make a trip to Oregon and check it out a couple years ago, but then COVID, you know, this was in the middle of all that nonsense. So
what do you think? DB CooperCon instead of Lancer this year, Rob, or what? to check out the rifle, or what?
That'd be interesting.
Although, I do have to bring up something that our mutual.
Hang on, real quick, Joe, because I see Philippe in the comments, and you know what? Philippe, one day we'd love to have you back on the show because I want to talk to you about this Johnson rifle that your dad had for sure, and find out what you know about it. I think
the 30 outside
would make for an interesting show, and what Philippe thinks about all these other guys like Hall and Howard,
and his relationship with Hall, and when it went sour, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, this was all right about the same time,
right? But it would be interesting to hear.
Hey, that's right. Colleen's in Oregon. She says, "How can she help?" Hey, go track down John Papis and check out that rifle. Get us some good, high quality shots of that rifle. That would be sweet.
Go to DB CooperCon. Apparently, it's a real party. And like everyone celebrates and dresses up, and I don't know. And there's rumors that DB Cooper once attended DB CooperCon.
Right.
Of course, that is
completely. You got about as many teeth in your head now as old Larry Crayford had, Colleen. You got 5 taken out today, so God bless you. That would be cool. That would be a cool find.
Yeah. Well, Rob, I want to follow up on something you said earlier. Okay. You mentioned that there was nothing about.
Hold on, real quick. I just gotta say this. Colleen said, "Bite me, Bob," and I'll just say, at least I can bite you, Colleen, because I have all my teeth.
Whoa. Are you wait, you're messing with your queen Colleen? Are you crazy?
Look, she's getting new ones. It's all good. It's all good. It's all love. It's all love. She's brand new.
Okay. I've learned not to mess with Colleen, so.
No, we love you, Colleen. We just because we love. Yes.
Okay, so I came across this HSCA document, and there were a number of individuals, agency employees, employees of other government departments, or cooperating individuals, both foreign and American, whose names are concealed. That their identification is readily ascertainable. It is inevitable. In such detailed review, that is a good deal. Blah, blah, blah. This draft makes extensive use of the true names of employees and individuals who were involved. The deaths of such persons as senior government officials and of Alan Dulles, C.B. Cabell, Desmond Fitzgerald, Sheffield Edwards, Tracy Barnes, and Salvatore Giancana
Oh, Sammy G. Sammy G.
may obviate the need. I don't know what that fucking word means.
Obviate.
The need to protect their names in association with
Obvi.
the yeah. Let's put that. Sounds about right. With the events treated in the draft report, so they were trying to hide Tracy Barnes' name in the HSCA, and maybe that's why you did not see anything about Robert Morrow's testimony in the HSCA.
Yeah.
What are your
was
thoughts
looking.
on that? Well, I'm saying it could be if they're gonna tell you what names they're not going to talk about. They're definitely not going to tell you the names they're definitely not going to talk about, right?
Yeah.
In theory. I don't know.
Yeah. So I was just looking. I remember I thought Morrow basically laid all this stuff at the feet of Trafficante. And what Morrow went on to say is, well, eventually Robert Morrow did come out of wherever he was hiding from and write another book right after the film JFK came out. How convenient. Called Firsthand Knowledge in 1992. And what he did in this book, he basically laid it out like this, folks. The execution of John
wait, can I stop you? You said his dates of CIA contract was 61 through 64.
Yeah.
Okay. Just want to point that out.
Yeah. The execution of John F. Kennedy would be performed by a series of teams selected from CIA-sponsored exile and mercenary groups in Miami and New Orleans. The modus operandi to be employed would be very simple. The murder of the president could not resemble a standard syndicate killing. It should ideally be made to look as if it were the work of a lone gunman. As a sure kill could not be guaranteed by the work of only one gunman, 2 additional firing sites would be necessary. The next item to pursue was the involvement of Fidel Castro. Now, this is where we might start going off the rails here a little bit.
Okay.
He says Trafficante planned the scenario. He would act as a double agent and through an intermediary warn Castro. Now, this is a pretty clever plot if you really think about it. He would warn Castro that the CIA, under a presidential directive, would execute another assassination attempt on the Cuban dictator's life. Trafficante would then select 2 expendable subordinates who would be set up to murder Castro. The hitmen, under the impression that they were actually working for the CIA, would of course be caught by Castro and reveal, after having been tortured, the identity of their supposed employer. As further evidence of their CIA affiliation, they would be equipped with assassination items readily identifiable with the clandestine agency. With both this evidence and the confessions of the hitmen, Fidel Castro would undoubtedly make a statement indicating his desire for revenge against the United States government. And after the death of JFK, Castro's statement would be viewed as evidence of his complicity in the president's assassination. So what do you think about that double-dealing, backstabbing son of a bitch there?
Well, I mean, there's been long rumored that Trafficante, who was very much involved in the assassination plots, wasn't actually trying to assassinate him.
Well,
I think we went over a couple.
AJ Weberman interviewed Lauren Hall, okay, and I've heard the audio. He says there's only 2 of us left that know what happened. That's me and Santos Trafficante, and I ain't saying shit. And that's exactly what Lauren Hall said.
Yeah.
Again, a guy that had a 7.35 millimeter rifle that he gave to his son, told him to put it away, forget about it. You'll know why.
Yep. And you have to keep in mind the quote country club, and I don't know this for sure, but jail he was in in Cuba, right? And did he actually plan or choose to stay there longer than he needed to avoid certain legal issues in the United States? Did he make a deal with Castro to get out and give him information? I mean, Castro had more moles in the Cuban exile force groups than a lot of people realize. He knew what was coming. He knew the Bay of Pigs was coming. He knew a lot of things. So it would not surprise me to have Trafficante playing both sides. No, because that's what mafia figures do.
Yeah.
They play.
So
They
not
play
only
both
did
sides.
Morrow have this information this early in the game, folks, he's got other information before a lot of other people do too. So check this out. So in his book, Firsthand Knowledge, he says on September the 25th, 1964, that was when the Warren Commission report was delivered to the FBI. It would be without any questionable information regarding Cuban exiles, the mafia, or the CIA. Hoover was pleased. Helms relieved. Coley upset that Castro had not been blamed. Rolando Kiki Masfer and the Mafia Dons delighted, and a host of other U.S. citizens such as myself puzzled. This was a condition that would not, however, last much longer for me. Now, what's interesting, too, is Rolando Kiki Masfer was also hanging out with a lot of these guys down there, like Lauren Hall. In and around Miami with those folks as well. He says 17 days after Hoover received the Warren Commission report, on October the 12th, 1964, the murder of Mary Meyer, former wife of Richard Helms' number 2 man, Cord Meyer, and James Angleton's deputy on the towpath of C&O Canal in Georgetown would confirm my revelations. Mary Meyer, aside from being a good friend of Angleton and Bobby Kennedy, had been the favorite mistress of John F. Kennedy. Unfortunately for Angleton, Mary was also the sister of Tony Bradley, the wife of Washington Post editor Ben Bradley. According to Tony, the friendship between Mary and Ben ceased 6 months prior to her murder. It was due to an article Bradley had published in the Newsweek magazine alluding to her affair with the president. After her murder, Bradley claimed that he discovered Angleton breaking into Mary's home with a picklock in an attempt to find her personal diary. Tony Bradley, now divorced from Ben, says she found the diary among Mary's personal papers and turned it over to Angleton. Angleton maintained that he buried it or burned it along with other personal correspondence of the dead woman. Angleton would be forced into retirement in late 1974 as a result of his involvement in the CIA's illegal Operation Chaos, a secret domestic spy program that had been greatly enlarged under the Nixon administration. So he goes on and he meets with this guy Diggs, Marshall Diggs, who had introduced him to Tracey Barnes, and this was in the mid-70s. And he says, Diggs looked much older than I remembered him. What we discussed during the course of the next hour also aged me. After the waiter had taken our order and served our drinks, he discreetly retired. Then Diggs, without any preamble, informed me there could be a possible attempt on my life. My attention was immediate, focused, and complete. There is a very prominent lady here in Washington who knows too much about the company, its Cuban operations, and more specifically about the president's assassination. Cautiously, I remarked, so? What my friend claims to know could frankly mean a lot of trouble for Coley's people, myself, the former vice president, and especially you. If you remember, the president was killed shortly after Robert closed down your counterfeiting operation. I said, I remember, but Cuban involvement? We all thought that was a dead issue. Seriously, we never heard anything about a possibility from the Warren Commission. Diggs said, forget that, shaking his hand at me impatiently, and listen carefully. The commission was suspicious, and had they been allowed to pursue certain leads, well, it's probable you and I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Damn it, Marshall. If you're trying to frighten me, you are. It's over. And not one mention of the Cubans, any Cubans, or the CIA. There isn't a hint of anything other than that Oswald got up one morning and decided he didn't like the president. I wish his brother thought that, Diggs said. You mean RFK? Yes, RFK. Now, damn it, listen. As I said, there's a certain lady in town who has an inside track to Langley, and most importantly to Bobby. Unfortunately, an intimate friend of mine is one of her best friends. So they're talking about Mary Meyer again. Now, Mary Meyer divorced Cord Meyer in 1956. Then after Kennedy was elected, she started spending nights in the White House. Well. So to get to the point, they're going through this mafia connection, yada, yada, yada. And that's the whole point. I don't know where he is and don't want to know. He's been told he's going to lose his appeal, so he's preparing to jump bail and disappear. And they're talking about Mario Coley there. Because Eladio Duvalier, as you might remember, Joe, was found dead the same day as David Ferry in 1967.
Yep.
So all these names and all these players kind of start to tie in together.
Yeah.
And you start making these random connections. And, certainly people like Lauren Hall fit the bill as, Cuban freedom fighters, mercenaries.
Yeah.
And that's who he says these weapons were handed over to.
Yeah.
And there's the whole suspicious thing about David Ferry heading to Texas, the day of the assassination.
Was it Galveston, the ice skating rink?
Yeah, to go ice skating with his buddies for some reason.
He was
it's just
on
like
phone.
And that's allegedly who had the rifles and I was reading in there too, about these communication devices, these short range communication devices. Who said they were operated off of like a 4D pack of batteries that would fit in somebody's back pocket. They had to have very long antennas, which he said could be ran down the inside of a pant leg to kind of conceal things. And they would only work within 50 to 100 feet of each other in order not to be detected, not to come up on the wave range of other people who might just happen to be listening on certain frequencies. But very crazy stuff. And like I said, I'd highly recommend people check out the book, see what he has to say. And, it's just very interesting that all of this just comes out and you start hearing things about these 7.35 millimeter Carcano rifles. And guess who just happens to have one? Gives to his stepson to put away and say, hey, put this away and forget about it. One day you'll know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Scott. You are the man.
Yes. Thank you. No, it's
third drink.
And on, it's going back to the Guatemala coup. All these characters were working together and they were successful in PBSuccess, appropriately named, by the way. And, these relationships could have developed over, almost a decade, right? To possibly either be plotters or foreknowledge. Of course, we're not saying anyone did, but they're definitely candidates.
For Sheezy.
What do we got in the comments here?
I'm reading.
President was taken out due to LSD with Mary Meyer. Interesting.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
By the way, okay, can I go back to your quick hits comment of how you just want to go out tripping balls?
Oh, yes. Yes, please do.
I love that idea. I think that would be the perfect way to go into the next
Yeah.
dimension, right? I mean, is there any
Yeah.
better way?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
I mean, what more could you ask for at that point?
All right.
Like Doug said, a hot 20-year-old woman, but with enough acid, you could pretend that was happening.
Right. Yeah.
So it really wouldn't need to happen. And then you just float on. That's what that song with Modest Mouse, we all float on.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I guess we should address a comment or two more, and then maybe wrap it up if we don't have anything else.
And I'm gonna put it out there too again, Philippe. I'm gonna message you soon and see if you want to come back on and talk about some rifles, and of course your father. And I think that would be an awesome show. This time we leave Scott off the show, and maybe we can actually have a conversation.
Yeah.
About some things. That would be awesome. But yeah, oh no, definitely not Jack Valente on the grassy knoll, Scott. No. Nay. Negatory. Can't have that.
Well, we hope you learned a little something about Tracy Barnes, about Robert Morrow, about the Carcanos, a little bit more context on Lauren Hall, one of our favorite suspects. And we thank everyone that has joined us tonight. Over 30 at one point, and we are very appreciative of all the support. And I'll let you close it out. The Triple B.
The Triple B. Well, let me play our outro music that Roger was so kind to put together for us. A nice little ditty to talk our way out of this thing, Joe.
Catch us next week.
I put him in the credits as our music producer.
Beautiful.
Yeah, he deserves it.
Yes, he does. Thank you, Roger.
Yep. So thanks again, everyone, for hanging out. Thank you again for the super chats and super stickers. You guys rock. We love you. Colleen, eat soft foods, mashed potatoes, and ice cream. Heal them things up. Get the new ones put in. You'll be good to go. Good to go.
And some more nitrous.
Yeah, and I'll check into where in Oregon this Papis guy is. Maybe you're close to him. Maybe you're not. I don't know. Hopefully you can go over and check him out. And that'd be kind of cool to talk to him and interview him and get some.
Yeah, he seems really receptive. He seems
really wants to talk about this stuff. So maybe we can bring him up to speed on all this other information with these 7.35 millimeter Carcanos and what Robert Morrow was talking about.
And come and tell us what you found.
That's right. Philippe said no. Oh, he was just talking about Rip Robertson standing on the corner. Yeah, no, that was not Jerry Hemmings standing on Houston Street there. No, that guy was a dork. Hemming was a badass back then. He had a horribly square flat top, whoever that guy was standing on Houston Street. But yes.
Was he 6'7"?
Something like that. 6'6", 6'7". I guess.
No, I'm saying what the guy
boots were. I don't know. He was standing like head and shoulders above everybody else.
Okay. Well, Tracy Barnes was also, as we consistently talk past our outro music, maybe we should reboot it.
We need longer outro. I should loop that shit. Hold on. Let me loop it.
Yeah,
looping it.
Loop it.
Lupus. Hey, Paul, you're late, bud.
Maybe, there's the allegation that Tracy Barnes was in Dealey as well. kind of like the Rip Robinson thing. So that's interesting as well.
Hey, hey, Mike. Why do you think he wrecked it? Why do you think he wrecked then?
No, but Alpha 66, I will be riding a scooter in the Dealey Plaza and the hotel area. If it's Lorenzo, I will conquer the scooter for the whole Lancer smoking section to see.
We're gonna have a scooter race in Dallas this year,
Yes,
and we're allowed to kick each other.
yes. So
It's gonna be brutal. That's
Wait.
all right, Paul. You can check out the replay, my friend, here in a hot minute. Once again, thank you everyone for hanging out with us. We had a blast. Hopefully you learned something. I know we did, for sure. Until next week, folks. Peace and chicken grease.
and have some quiche and peace.